Welcome, and welcome to another exceptional episode of Extraordinary Ordinary Women. And I'm excited to be able to share with you stories of ordinary women in our community, women who have had a dream or an idea and followed it through to fruition. Their stories will encourage you, uplift you, and hopefully inspire you to ignite the seeds of greatness within your heart. For it's through sharing that we come to realize that we are not Robinson Crusoe, all alone on our little island, but that there is, and particularly now with social media, this network of truly amazing women who are eager to stretch out their hand with encouragement. Having found this for myself when my life was turned upside down and inside out, it is my gift to those women to be able to pay forward the gift of encouragement to others. So, without further ado, I have great pleasure in introducing you to Laura White. Laura is an inspiring woman whose journey shows us the power of resilience and reinvention. Laura had dreams of representing Australia as an Olympic canoeist, but her hopes were dashed as she came to realise late in her teens that this was not going to come to fruition. So, rather than letting that setback define her, she chose to pivot, which is such a valuable skill at any age, let alone a teenager. And it takes courage. Thus, she was able to bring her passion, her discipline, and her experience into a new chapter, that of officiating. Her story, you will find, is one of strength, adaptability, and finding purpose beyond the original plan. So, hello and welcome, Laura.
Hi, Margarita. It's lovely to join you.
Pleasure to have you here. So, Laura, what initially sparked your interest, your passion for canoeing and wanting to join the Olympic team?
Well, the Olympics actually goes back to grade 3 in 1984,
Oh,
the LA Olympics, which is sort of a bit funny that we're about to go into the LA cycle again. We had been learning about the Olympic Games and, what they stood for and the meaning behind Citius, Altius, Fortius, swifter, higher, stronger, as it was proposed to us back then. And I also had a love of Greek history as a child. So, these were demigods to me. And I was like, I could be one of those people too. And so that little Olympic flame was actually sparked inside me. And then, fast forward a few years, and by this stage, we hadn't been in Melbourne for a little bit. And my dad came home with a kayak. And so we got into kayaking and we were both absolute water babies. So I sort of just took to it very, very naturally and just loved it. However, in Victoria at the time, canoeing or sprint and marathon canoeing were very much a masters sport, very few juniors in the entirety of the state. So I used to help out a lot, sitting in a little old tent, helping put races together and partners together and just having a bit of fun. So my volunteering side sort of started quite early. So Dad and I would go off for a day here or occasionally a weekend away. And, I'd have a good bit of daddy-daughter time at these canoeing events and also feeling quite grown up as a fledgling teenager organising things. And so the two really started combining. And as my realization that I was never going to be an Olympic athlete, came plummeting down on top of me, the idea of becoming an official was proposed to me. And that's essentially the pathway I've been on, because I realized I could still have that Olympic experience and still fulfill those dreams of being, the best that I could be at what I had chosen to do.
So, at what age did you start along that journey, Laura?
I was actually quite young. I think I was actually 11 when I started volunteering.
Yes.
And I was still 14, 15, 16. I was still doing some things for the state up to a national level. This was all pre-computer days. So I used to be the state entry secretary. So all the entries for the state would come into me and I would sort them all out before they went to the national entry secretary for national level
Gosh, that's a young age
competitions. Yeah.
doing something that has quite a lot of responsibility.
Yes, absolutely. I never thought about it at the time.
Of
It
course
was
you
just
don't.
what we did. No,
Yes.
and my dad loved the sport as well, and he jumped into the admin side, and he also joined the state committee and was running the sport for Victoria for some time. And my sister was not involved. She was the musical girl in our family and not sporty. And so sort of my dad and I would go off and mum would be stuck at home once my sister had left school. So she decided to join us. So it really became a family affair of mum, dad, and I off officiating together for many, many years.
Oh,
Mum and I actually did our certification together at a national level. I was just 18 at the time. So I'd already been officiating for probably from 15 or 16 onwards
oh.
at national level events. And it just kept growing.
And so when from national, how did the idea of becoming involved with the Olympics then move forward?
Well, we obviously that was all pre-Sydney. So we're talking, 25 years ago. So there were opportunities to be heavily involved in our sport for Sydney. And we had a large number of people, my dad was one of them, who were asked to sit their international certification. And they were appointed as the international officials for the Sydney Olympic Games. I wasn't at the time. I was only, I think, 22 or 23 when the games were on. So still sort of I was very much the baby of, of the crew. But my mum and I were both there as volunteers. So we had our own, fantastic experience together while my dad was off with the international team. And so it just kept growing, but having that massive, incredible, fantastic event in essentially our own backyard was a real stimulus to go, I want to be that person too. I want to get an opportunity to travel internationally and to go to the Olympic Games and go to World Championships and other whatever else might be out there. And so I just kept chipping away, kept putting my hand up, kept turning up at events.
And so you became involved with the Olympic section then?
Yeah, so obviously that was just the one-off in 2000, but we still look back to it. There's a few of us still around from those games, and we're obviously looking forward to 32. We now have 2 games. Our sport has extended. We now have para canoe as well, which we didn't back in Sydney. We weren't a Paralympic sport. So I've got the two events to support coming up. And over the years, I sort of went from being the junior official to being on par with my parents and working alongside them. And then, as the years have progressed, I became sort of, I guess, what we call one of the senior officials, pretty much just someone who's been around a very long time.
Well, it sounds like you've been around a long time.
Yeah, and the roles do have a little bit of seniority to them as well. And after I sat my international certificate in 2008, it was a couple of years before I started traveling, but I realized if I don't put my hand up, I won't have any international experience, and we're not bringing that information back home. So at the time, we didn't have anyone else traveling, or really only one other person. And I was like, we're missing out here as a sport in Australia. So I was also, kind of looking into the future and thinking, if all my peers suddenly retire, I've still got, 20, 30, maybe 40 years ahead of me. And who's going to be around me? And do I have the right level of knowledge to be hosting events in Australia at the right level of quality for our athletes and our coaches here? So it was kind of like a mix of different things. And it really has been evolutionary, having fulfilled a few great dreams in the last few years. I was fortunate to be selected to go to the Tokyo Paralympic Games and then last year the Paris Olympic Games. And obviously with Brisbane coming, I'm really looking forward, and I've been on a journey for sort of the last 5+ years of developing the education for officials to bring new people on board. And I'm really hoping that they'll get that experience come 32 and beyond as well.
So
to,
your role,
building up our ranks and taking us forward.
yes, so your role is quite diverse in what you've jumped into for yourself in educating
Yes.
and bringing younger people into this. Yes, but it sounds
Yes.
like you've had a wonderful experience traveling overseas.
Yes, the overseas travel is absolutely wonderful. You can't beat a trip overseas in the middle of winter here to go to a European summer or North American summer. So that's always nice, escaping winter. But similar to athletes, how they develop friendships around the world, so do we as officials. And I've got some wonderful friends, I think, in almost every country, every continent. Some people I catch up with quite regularly. If you happen to be in a country, you sort of call that person and go, hey, I'm here. What do I do? Where do I go? We've actually got someone coming out here next week down to Sydney. I can't wait to catch up with that person. It's a sister from another town is essentially what it is. So we're a global family as well, which is really delightful.
So when you travel, do you travel separately to the Olympic team, or does the Olympic team encompass officials, coaches, and athletes?
No, so for the Paralympics and Olympic Games, we're actually separate. We're essentially independent. So we're all appointed by our international federations for those events. So when the sad part is we're not part of the Australian Olympic team or the Australian Paralympic team when we go to those two very exciting events. And part of that is neutrality. Yes, we support the Australians naturally, but at events, we're neutral. We don't really see countries
right.
at all. So we are appointed internationally, and be one person per country for the maximum number of officials that they can have for their sport. So we only have 26 to 28 officials appointed for those events. So it's not that many. So it really is, for some people, a once in a lifetime opportunity as well to get to those events.
So, Laura, every passion we choose, there are challenges. And becoming an officiate, what have been some of the challenges you faced?
Definitely the boys' club.
Oh.
When I was younger years, there was, like any sport, and to many extents in some sports, it still is very much a boys' club, and the girls haven't reached the glass ceiling. I've been extraordinarily fortunate in my sport that I've had incredible females ahead of me here in Australia and overseas. And we have gender parity at our events. We have since Tokyo at an international level. So that's incredible. And our females are also getting appointed to senior roles as well. So it's not just the boys getting the senior roles and the women getting the junior roles. Not that they're called that, but
yes,
I'll say roles that can make decisions on outcomes of events. People who may have the ability to disqualify an athlete, which we're not there to disqualify athletes, but those roles are just sort of considered impactful because they can change results. So it's great to see women globally getting those opportunities, and definitely to have the gender parity, when I know there's other sports struggling to get a foot in the door and or have the door opened and even recognize that there's a door there. So I'm very lucky with that. But the other challenges, really, or the biggest one, is we're all volunteers, and asking volunteers to do things like you can't kind of just tell them what to do, because we're not in paid roles. I would never ask anybody to do something that I myself wouldn't do. But because we're volunteers, how we educate people, how we care for people is completely different than a working environment. In a nice way, you can upset someone at work and you've still got to work with them. If you upset a volunteer, well, they can just go, I don't need this, and off they go, and you've lost your volunteers. And it can take an incredibly long time to develop volunteers because we don't have that many events each season. So it does take time. In some cases, it can take years to really develop someone from a base level of I don't know what this sport's called. I keep calling it, rowing instead of paddling, to being able to be a chief official at an event. That's a long-term commitment from people.
Well, that's a fascinating and interesting comment that you've made there and put light on, because you've dedicated many,
My
many
life.
years, your life.
Yes,
It
I
is.
think I've done 35 years in the sport, so that's giving away my age already.
Wow, that's incredible. And then, so as a volunteer, do you have to pay for your own fees, your accommodation, and your flights overseas to be able to officiate at events?
It depends on the event. So some of the events internationally are now covered by the nations who are attending. So all the different nations will pay an additional fee to help get the officials there. Obviously, there's still volunteers at an event. So if you go as a volunteer, then everything's on you. Some of the international events, it's all on you as well. Like your accommodation and food may be covered, but flights generally aren't at some.
Right.
So even domestically, most of it I pay for as well.
Well, I take my hat off to you, because not only the time and the years, but the money involved as well. Um,
Yes,
demonstrate
it's
that.
spend, but it's also time off work without pay is the other one. So I've often said, and excuse my cat running behind me, I've often said, I reckon you could easily, if you do sort of absolutely everything, spend or forego wages of 8-10 grand a year quite easily, and that's we only have a few events a year. We're not a super high commitment level in terms, if you compare my sport to say football, which seems to have events, or rugby, events week in, week out. Um, it's a very different cost involved. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've certainly shone the light on those that. So, having traversed this path for so many years and put so much into it, what have been some of the rewards that you've reaped?
Obviously, the two biggest ones have been the appointments to the Paralympic and the Olympic Games.
Right.
Yeah, absolute career highlights of being in the middle of the machine. It's sort of one way to say it, but the hype that goes with it, seeing the athletes up front competing, you get a front seat view. There's no barriers, there's no TV, you're seeing it in real time. The athletes are coming past you, they're saying hello to you. It's pretty cool to see that, and obviously the friendships as well. But I also think the opportunity that you have volunteering in sport, you can take it kind of wherever you want. Like if you have a special interest as well, and my has actually developed over the years of with the volunteers education. I didn't have that 15 years ago. There was no consideration of I want to put my hand up and help educate other people. I've developed that and I've become quite passionate about that now. And I think if you have that, it doesn't matter what it is, you can bring that skill in. So your outside skills can come in to the volunteering in sport. Your skills that you learn in sport can definitely be used outside in workplace as well. So it's a real two-way street. And family, I often talk about family, like my canoeing brothers and sisters. They've been my parents, as I said, for many years it was my parents before they retired. And I'd often rock up and go, hi mum, hi dad, hi mum, hi dad, hi dad, hi dad, hi dad. And now they're my big brothers and sisters. And now I've got some youngest ones coming through. Because we work together so closely for so many years, they do become your family. You get to know them, you get to know what's going on in their lives. And realistically, we work with our volunteers for longer than you might in a normal workplace. So it's lovely to see people over the years. And it's sad when we lose someone as well. And I think that's another reason for it being, or for me calling it a family, but I find that very special.
Hmm. Well, you're certainly very passionate about it, and I take my hat off to you, because that's a dedication, an immense dedication.
Thank you.
So,
Could probably think of a few other words occasionally.
oh, well, life is full of ups
Great
and downs,
craziness.
yings and yangs, isn't it? But to me, that's an
It is.
astounding achievement. So, Laura, my last question is, what words of wisdom would you like to share?
Words of wisdom. I don't know if I'm wise enough or old enough to give words of wisdom yet.
Oh,
Um,
right.
uh, if you have a sport that you have an interest in, even if you're not involved now, I would honestly say put your hand up and get involved. You know, especially with the games coming in 7 years' time, there are two incredible opportunities to get one of the best seats in the house, to be a volunteer, help run the sports. It's given me more than I've given, despite how much I've given over the years. And I think for me, that's really important. If I ever was to have reached a point where I go, I'm not getting much from this anymore, I've done my time. There'll be other people who come through, but I love the friendships domestically and internationally that I've formed, the friendships, the family, the opportunity, the sites that you get to see around the country, around the world. It really does make it special, and even an opportunity to speak to someone such as yourself and share a little bit of my own story is quite exciting for me as well. Most people don't really know much about canoeing except for Jess Fox. She's out, a superstar in slalom. And but even every time I get asked, do I know Jess? I love that, because it's a sport that's not one of the business sports, shall I say, of rugby or
Right.
netball and cricket. Having some focus in this country, sports mad country, it's really nice that there is someone who's become a household name, irrespective of which discipline of canoeing it actually is.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I understand what you're saying about the sport because I'm a horse enthusiast. And, when the Olympics come on, we get lots of running and athletics, but very little of
Yes.
the broader sports.
Yes.
And I love that
Yeah.
you've shared, become involved even as a volunteer because, oh, isn't that what you give out comes back to you tenfold?
Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely, it does. Um, and it's not, in gifts. It's, shall I say,
Oh,
it's in the heart
it,
is what you get back.
yes, yes,
It's the memories. It's the experience of being an official alongside my own parents. You can't buy an opportunity
absolutely not.
like that. And because I did that for many years, I've actually become friends with my parents. They're not just my parents; they're also friends as adults. And that's a very cool thing to have
Special,
in my life.
very
Yeah,
special. Yes, yeah.
it is. Yes.
Well, Laura, thank you very much for sharing your story here today. And I look forward to sharing another story of another extraordinary, ordinary woman with you all. Again, Laura, thank you. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. It's been delightful to talk to you, Margarita.
God bless.